On the show today, we get you all that is happening in Iran, where people have taken to the streets to express their frustration with the rising cost of living and an economy that is struggling amid sanctions. More on the show with our guest. We also tell you what American Democrat Socialist leader Zohran Mamdani has said after finally being sworn in as mayor of the New York City. This and much more up ahead, but first, let's begin with Iran. Iran has ushered in the new year with violent protests that refuse to die down. Thousands of Iranians are out on the streets marching against soaring inflation, water, as well as power shortages. This is the fifth day of demonstrations in the country. Protests have now spread to over 17 out of the 31 provinces. The provinces of Chahar Mahal, Bakhtiari, Ilam, Khuzestan, Khorasan Razavi, and Lorestan have all witnessed fresh demonstrations. Cities such as Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, Karaj, and Fasa are also on the boil. In the latest escalation, a member of Iran's security forces has been killed in the ongoing protests. The deputy governor of Lorestan province says the 21-year-old member of the Basij from the city of Kodasht was killed last night. The Basij are a volunteer paramilitary force linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Remember, this is the first officially confirmed death amid the protests since the start of these protests on Sunday. The deputy governor also informed that 13 police officers and Basij members were injured in a stone pelting incident. On Wednesday, protesters also attacked a government building in southern Iran. Eyewitness videos released showed people trying to access a building in the Fars province. Authorities confirmed that a portion of the provincial governor's office door and its glass were destroyed as well. Another footage showed protesters clashing with security forces in the western city of Hamadan. Earlier, Iran's prosecutor general had warned that any attempt to create insecurity would be met with a decisive response. On New Year's Eve, authorities announced a holiday for banks, schools, and several other public institutions. And the reason? Well, officials said is due to cold weather and the need to preserve energy. Remember, these protests began on Sunday in Tehran's largest mobile phone market, where shopkeepers shuttered their businesses. The rallies have since built momentum, with students at 10 universities in the capital and in other cities joining in on Tuesday. The government has appointed a new governor, meanwhile, to the central bank after the former official resigned following a record currency fall against the US dollar. Inflation in Iran has surged past 42%, driven by a collapsing rial and sharply rising living costs. As the rial weakens to record lows, prices are spiraling. Food costs are up 72% year on year, while health and medical items have all risen 50%. Sanctions, political uncertainty, and fears of a wider conflict are all compounding pressure on households, shrinking purchasing power, and pushing the economy closer to the risk of hyperinflation. And all this has now led to the big question: how will the Pezeshkian government and the supreme leader ensure that Iranians get a stable economy? All right. Let's try and understand this situation better. I'm joined by Mr. Yusuf Jalali. He is joining us from Tehran. So he's been tracking these protests very closely. Yusuf Jalali, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on WION. I want to start by asking you, since you're in the middle of the unrest, what exactly is happening? 5 days of protest, they've now turned violent. There's also a death that has happened. What exactly are the students and the traders saying?
Of course, we've entered the fifth day of these protests, and the protests and strikes continue to persist across the country. The epicenter remains the capital, Tehran. Of course, in the area called the Grand Bazaar, which is a beating heart of Iran's economy. Still, many merchants and traders from different sectors now are jumping on the bandwagon and joining the protests. And of course, the strikes. Just earlier today, we saw demonstrators inside Iran's biggest fruit and vegetables market in downtown Tehran, which is actually the hub of food and vegetable, sending food items, fruits and vegetables across the country. This market has also been the scene of protesters chanting slogans against government mismanagement and asking and demanding that the government take an immediate action to try to stabilize the country's economy. Of course, students have also been on the scene clashing with security officers in different universities, major universities like the Amir Kabir and the Sharif University, and of course the University of Tehran. These are the main, the biggest and largest universities in the capital, Tehran. Of course, students have jumped on the wagon, and it's no longer limited to a specific guild members or a specific sector. Now we see that more and more sectors are joining in, closing their shops, closing their businesses, and joining the national effort to try to curb the rising inflation and, of course, the collapse in the Iranian national currency, the rial. So we have been witnessing some violent scenes coming out of different cities and provinces across the country, including the province of Chahar Mahal and Bakhtiari, where the Iranian president has recently visited. Of course, President Pezeshkian visited that province, and at that same province, we saw violent clashes between demonstrators and security officers there trying to quell the protests.
Yusuf, I'm going to come to this one by one. The first is, this started as traders expressing their concerns about rial falling and how they have been impacted. But now with students, younger ones joining in, this clearly is not just an economic concern. It is a lot of other frustrations that were there, which are now coming to the fore, isn't it?
Almost, yes, almost. It started as something demanding economic reforms or something like demands on the part of the Iranian traders and merchants asking the government to try to stabilize the country's economy. But it took a turn when students joined, and of course, they also joined the protests demanding wider freedoms, broader freedoms, like civil rights. And we've been witnessing some slogans demanding better freedom for the Iranian youth. Of course, but there's a lot of gray area in what these people want from the Iranian government. They have mixed slogans. They chant mixed slogans. We have witnessed slogans that address the economic woes in the country. And also there have been some slogans, some politically charged slogans as well. And that is what is concerning the Iranian government. And we've seen some reactions from the Iranian officials, including security officials and leaders in the Islamic Republic of Iran, urging the protesters to keep it legitimate and not play into the hands of the Iranian enemies. As we've seen some instances where, for example, a page on X linked to Mossad, it is in Persian, it's called Mossad Persian. This page has openly encouraged some protests inside Iran, and this is what is concerning the Iranian officials. So President Pezeshkian has vowed that he and his administration will recognize these protests. And of course, he called the demands legitimate, and he vowed to address those demands. But we have seen some comments from the Iranian security officials who have, of course, threatened and warned protesters against exploiting this situation and, of course, playing into the hands of the Iranian enemies. So we've been hearing these mixed reactions from the Iranian officials and, of course, mixed slogans inside this protesting crowd.
So Yusuf, what you're saying is, these youngsters have been joining these protests and there are political chants that are happening. Is there enough evidence to show that, like the Iranian government is saying, that the US and Israel have been fueling this unrest? Were they the ones who led to the beginning of these protests?
But of course, the Iranian government has always used this playbook to try to immediately brand anything inside those protests to foreign-linked agents. Of course, we're not sure, there's no evidence, but what Iranian officials are saying is that some of the slogans, some of the coordination attempts that take place and lead to those demonstrators going out take place in accounts or in like Telegram channels or some sources that are linked to foreign entities. That is based on claims by Iranian officials. And of course, some comments and some like sympathetic comments from the U.S. officials, from the Israeli officials, publicly encouraging those demonstrators to try to turn it into an anti-establishment protest, or like inciting violence inside these protest fields. These are what Iranian officials hold on to and cling to try to justify their claims that these protests are fueled or are engineered by foreign actors.
Okay, Yusuf, last question. The fact that the Iranian government is blaming Western powers of influencing these protests, which is there is, as you say, that there have been certain accounts that have been speaking on those lines. But the fact of the matter is that one can't deny that there have been domestic concerns as well. And therefore, what would it take for the Pezeshkian government to actually quell the protesters and make sure that these protests end and people are satisfied?
So far, no tangible impacts. So far, we've not witnessed any tangible impacts on people's livelihood, despite some attempts by the Iranian government trying to revise the budget. It has recently, of course, handed the budget to the Iranian parliament for review. And of course, we've not witnessed a significant surge or improvement in the value of the Iranian national currency. It went down a little bit from 1.42 million prior to those protests to now 1.35 million. Still not significant, because a couple of months ago it was less than 1 million to the US dollar. And it has ever since 3 months ago, it has lost more than 30% of its value. So these protesters seem to be adamant to go out on the streets and demand more economic reforms. As long as their demands are not met, they don't appear to be subsiding.
Okay. All right, Yusuf Jalali, we leave it there. Thank you very much for helping us understand what the situation on ground is. Let's wait and watch how the next few days and weeks unfold for Iran. Thank you very much. All right, let's shift our focus to the United States of America now, where the New York City has got a new mayor this new year. Zohran Kwame Mamdani has taken oath of office. On the first day of 2026, the city of New York has got its first Muslim mayor. At the stroke of midnight, Mamdani placed his hand on Islam's holy book, Quran, in fact, and promised to support the Constitution of the United States of America.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you. And I, Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
Zohran Kwame Mamdani.
Congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
The historic Old City Hall subway station was also a stage of an iconic moment. Letitia James, the first black person to serve as New York's Attorney General, administered the oath for the first Muslim mayor, who was accompanied by his wife of Syrian origin, Rama Douaji.
Thank you. This is truly the honor and the privilege of a lifetime. And after just having taken my oath to become the mayor of the city of New York, I do so also here in the Old City Hall subway station, a testament to the importance of public transit to the vitality, the health, and the legacy of our city.
After the late-night swearing-in, Mamdani will again take oath at the City Hall in a grand ceremony. This time, it will be administered by his political hero, Bernie Sanders. This will be followed by a public block party on a stretch of Broadway known as Canyon of Heroes. Remember, as Mamdani takes over the reins of one of the most important political jobs in America, the spotlight now shifts from what he says to what he does. He faces the task of fulfilling the tall promises that he had made during his campaign, capping rent increases, free city run, childcare, and expanding public services. And let me go across to our correspondent Susan Tehrani. She's joining us live from New York. Susan, finally, all of you New Yorkers have a new mayor in Zohran Mamdani. While that historic swearing-in ceremony has now happened, let's talk about what people expect of him. Clearly now the spotlight, all eyes are on what he does and how he fulfills his promises. And one of his challenges would be to get the funding to get his promises fulfilled.
Absolutely right. And really his election and victory signals an ideological and generational shift here in New York, and perhaps for the Democratic Party moving forward as well. The first 100 days are, as you mentioned, going to be very important in how he's going to set up his agenda and how much support he has from Albany. And the government in New York, essentially, Governor Kathy Hochul, for example, has a lot of sway on what happens in New York City, although Mamdani could be instrumental in working with her side by side. And then you have the state assembly as well that ultimately will have to pass a lot of Mamdani's laws, whether it comes to freeze on rents, whether it comes to his transportation policies, and notably on affordability moving forward here in New York. And let's not forget that he has the challenge of dealing with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, in the White House, despite the fact that they had a cordial meeting when they did meet a while back. Moving forward, how they're going to move together, notably when it comes to illegal immigration and migration, is going to be very important. I do want to say there's going to be a block party and a full-on Mamdani Fest in downtown later on today, and that's where New Yorkers are going to gather to officially usher in the new mayor of New York. But a lot he has on his plate. Let's see how he handles it.
Absolutely, Susan. I hope you're going to that party and waiting and watching how Zohran Mamdani fares on that front. But thank you very much for getting us the latest from NYC.
Yep.
All right, now let's shift our focus now to Bangladesh. It is officially election year in the country. The Jamaat-e-Islami is returning to the political battlefield after, remember, 17 long years with more than a decade of being banned. Jamaat-e-Islami's president has publicly stated that the party is interested in being part of a multi-party or unity government. Shafiqur Rahman, the party president, said that they have already held several rounds of talks with leaders from other parties.
Because we want to see a stable nation, at least for 5 years. If the parties come together, that we'll run the government together. But we have given 3 conditions to every party.
So what are the conditions that Jamaat-e-Islami has listed out? Number 1, the allying parties should be corruption-free. Number 2, social justice for all and no political interference. Number 3, fulfilling people's aspirations and supporting reforms. These comments come after the Jamaat-e-Islami has historically always advocated for a Sharia law in Bangladesh. More recently, the party said that it had attempted to garner support over and above its conservative base. Last time the party was in power was between 2001 and 6 as a coalition partner with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. It was former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina who had banned Jamaat for more than a decade. Following Hasina's ouster in August 2024, the largest Muslim party of Bangladesh appealed to the Supreme Court to review the 2013 ban order. And in June 2025, the country's top court reinstated the party's registration. More than 6 months later, pre-election polls predict Jamaat-e-Islami to emerge as the second largest party in the country after the BNP. Voting is scheduled to be held on the 12th of February. Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that China's reunification is unstoppable 2 days after staging a live-fire drill around Taiwan. In his New Year's speech, Xi said that people of both China and Taiwan are bound by blood ties thicker than water.
Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are bound by blood ties thicker than water, and the historical trend toward national reunification is unstoppable.
Beijing launched missiles and deployed dozens of fighter jets, Navy ships and Coast Guard vessels this week to encircle Taiwan's main island. in exercises condemned by Taipei as highly provocative. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te, in his New Year's speech, vowed to defend the democratic island's sovereignty.
While we should uphold ideals for peace, we must not fall into illusions. Peace can only be achieved through strength. Peace cannot be achieved by a mere peace agreement or by accepting the aggressor's terms.
China's show of force, remember, follows a bumper round of arms sale to Taiwan by United States, which is Taipei's main security backer, as well as comments from Japan's Prime Minister that the use of force against Taiwan could warrant a military response from Tokyo.
International support for Taiwan has never wavered. Countries including the United States, Japan, the United Kingdom, and members of the European Union have all demonstrated their support for Taiwan and for peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait.
China's latest military exercise was the 6th major round of maneuvers since 2022, when a visit to Taiwan by the then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi enraged Beijing. Taiwan has responded to the growing pressure by increasing defense spending on smaller and more nimble weaponry to enable its military to wage asymmetric warfare against more powerful Chinese forces. But it is under American pressure to do more. Lai's government aims to boost its 2026 defense budget to more than 3% of the GDP and increase spending to 5% of the GDP by 2030. There is a growing clamor in Japan for more restrooms for women representatives in the parliament building in a nation marked by gender inequality. Nearly 60 women lawmakers, including the Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, have all submitted a petition in the parliament calling for more restrooms to match their improved representation in the legislature. The cross-party petition was signed by 58 women to Yasukazu Hamada, the chair of the lower house committee on rules and administration, earlier this month. There's only one restroom containing 2 stalls for the lower house's 73 women to use near the parliament's main plenary session hall in Tokyo. By comparison, the entire lower house building has 12 men's restrooms with 67 cubicles. In the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report, Gender Rigid Japan ranked 118 out of 148 countries last year. In elections, women candidates in Japan have reportedly said that they often have to deal with sexist jibes. Currently, 72 of the 465 lower house lawmakers are women, up from 45 in the previous parliament. In the upper house, 74 of the 248 members are women. Now, even as there has been marked rise in the number of women politicians in the last election, and despite Takaichi becoming the first woman prime minister in October, Japanese politics remains heavily male-dominated. There are just 2 other women in Takaichi's 19-member cabinet. And with that, it's a wrap on Race to Power, but news and updates will continue on WION. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at WION.com.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister